Well, good evening from Australia. I'm very lucky this evening to be talking to Padoh Saw David Tharckabaw, who is a senior figure in the Karen ethnic group of Myanmar. So, David, you were born, I think, in 1935, which makes you probably 86 or 87. Is that correct?
Correct. I'm 87 now.
87 already. David, would you mind telling us a little bit about your background, your long life that you've led?
Yes, sure. So I was born in 1935. My parents, my father was a Karen from the Delta, Irrawaddy Delta. She was a poor Karen. And my mother is a Karen of the hill of the Kareni. And my father was an employee of the Bamar Railway. I think must be in 1930 or earlier. And he was posted in Myitkyina, far in the north of Burma. In Kachin State, yes, I was born there. And my mother was a school teacher employed by the American Baptist Mission School, yes. Yes, it was in Taungji. But they met at a wedding of a friend. And so yes, they got married in about 1930. It must be 32 or something like that, 1932. And after that, I knew very little about infanthood, I should say. Yes. When I was about 2 or 3 years, I remember that I was in Mandalay. Mandalay is the central part of the country. You know, a Burman, shall we say, land, Burman land. It was one time in the feudal days the capital, the capital of the Burman king. So I started schooling there at the age of 3, I think. And then what I remember was in 1942, late 1942.
The Japanese?
The Japanese, yeah, the Japanese invasion. I remember that. And of course, the Japanese occupied Burma for 3 years. What I noted was we were trapped. Sort of, we couldn't come back to my mother's hometown of Taungji in Shan State. So we were trapped during the whole period of Japanese occupation in Middle Burma. Middle Burma is the land of the Burman ethnic people. So I grew up there, and homeschooling, it was, my mother was a school teacher, and of course it's more like a hobby. She started a small, tutorial class, and there are many friends, and I remember even there was Japanese civilian officials, teaching Japanese language.
So the Japanese did not mistreat your family?
Not mistreat, but what happened was when they were withdrawing, they just one or two looted our, some coins, British coins, stacked outside somewhere in a near a village. We were outside. We have to stay outside village because there was bombing by the British. Yes, bombing of villagers in that area in the central Burma. So we had to stay outside, and our pots and pans, everything, every small thing, property. So the Japanese, not I think just individual Japanese came and took away some coins that I remember, and some came and catch our chickens and goose. What I remember was goose. Yes. Also, the Japanese officer level is okay, but the lower level, they go out and loot, and so we lost. Our family lost a few chickens and goose. That I remember. Yes. Okay. Then after that, the British occupation came. The British occupation. It's not very far from the Megtila battle that took place. And yes, I remember during the war, I lost two brothers, infant brothers, yes.
Through illness. Through illness.
Yeah. Through illness, through lack of treatable, it was, I think, just simply dysentery.
Right.
Not a serious, but due to lack of medicine, they died. They died. One was in 1943, I think, and the other one is in 1945. So, of course, that made me
very sad.
A little bit sad, and I sort of take up probably the character of melancholy, a little bit character.
And were you the only child left, or were there other children?
I still have a sister, a younger sister, about 4 years younger than 4 years younger. She is still in, and of course, we cannot communicate now.
Of course.
And what happened is so we went back, after the British, when the British came, of course, we were starving, almost starving during the Japanese time. My father had a double barrel, so we went out to hunting. We get a few, deer in that area, in the jungle, in the brushes. We had rabbits, and so I remember that.
Is this
the British came?
Is that outside Mandalay, or you're talking about you went back to?
Outside Mandalay. It's on the railroad between Megtila and Yinjan. Yinjan is somewhere on the way to, I think, Mandalay. Yinjan is connected to Mandalay. So we were in the central Burma anyhow, at the dry zone.
Yep.
And yes, so when the British came, they brought, canned food like corned beef. I remember corned beef, cigarettes, and also sardines. And it was just, a grand, we have of nutrition.
So they provided the food to the population.
Yes, we exchanged with the egg, fresh egg. They like so they, one egg you can get a can of sardine.
Okay.
Two eggs you get corned beef like that. So we remember that, very happy about having better protein in those days. And in 1946, I think the railway was running again. So my father was a station master, a station master, and he was employed still in that dry zone. But my mother and the two of us, myself and my sister, went to Town G, my mother's hometown, Town G in Shan State,
Yeah.
And we continued the education, of course, in 1946, 46, 47, 48, 48. In those days, of course, there was independence approaching.
Yeah.
And we heard about, I was still young, I think 11 years or 12 years, something like that. And in 1947, there was talk about movement, something like a movement, Karen-Burman friendship, because there was a very serious misunderstanding during the Japanese time, because many Karen villages in the Delta were attacked by the so-called Bamar Independence Army troops. And of course, Aung San was the I think, commanding officer, the top commanding officer of the Bamar Independence Army. So there was a lot of misunderstanding, but Aung San was, of course, arranged that, this Karen-Burman friendship movement. And still, there was a lot of misunderstanding. And by the Karen, they thought that Aung San was responsible for the massacre of the Karen in the Delta, But actually, I found out that Aung San was not responsible. BIA was just a loose organization, a loose military organization. And some lower level commanders were responsible for the killing, the massacre of the mass, killing of Karen villagers and in the Irrawaddy. Because I was assisting one American history, I think, doctorate student. And we went through archives, library, the writings and about the BIA and Japanese occupation. I found out that Aung San was far away, at that time. He was with the Japanese troops.
Right.
Japanese vanguard in China when the massacre took place. When he returned, he immediately met with the Karen leaders. He was, though young, he was, almost like a genius.
So the BIA, the BIA is the Burma Independence Army, or
Burma Independence Army. They thought that the Karen were pro-British.
Right.
Of course, the Karen developed quickly under the British rule. So the Karen were very pro-British. Of course, many became Christians, but it was not the British who Christianized the Karen. It was the American, American missionaries.
Right.
Christianized the Karen, and not only the Karen of the Kachin, the Chin people, because they were mostly non-Buddhist, non-Buddhist, more like an animist.
Animist, yeah.
They cannot, very successful. The American missionaries were very successful in converting, Christianizing the non-Burman nationalities, we call.
So the lack of trust between the Karen and the Burman goes back to that massacre.
That massacre, yes. Also further back, because during the feudal days, the Karen were the earliest settlers of the country now known as Myanmar or Burma, So you find them in near the sea. For example, in the coastal areas of the Irrawaddy Delta, you find them in far in the south. And of course, some remain also near the central, hills of Middle Burma.
Adjoining Thailand.
Yes, adjoining Thailand, east, east. Because they follow the Irrawaddy, the migration followed the Irrawaddy River, the Sitang River, and mostly the Selung River. So you find them far in the south. And the Burman came down, the Burman were more better organized because they got the Buddhist civilization and they had writing, literature, culture, this, that, and better organized, and they sent out raids to the current areas and looted, looted the rice or catch, for example, seize people for slavery, So
really?
The Karen were very much, oppressed people before in the British occupation. When the British occupation was more like liberation, they were liberated. So they cooperated with the British. You can read a book, Our Burmese War by I don't know, I forgot one military officer wrote about our Burmese War. The Second Anglo, it was about Second Anglo-Burmese War. You find that he said something about the Karen when they were in Rangoon area. The Karen was serving as the scouts of the British troops.
Oh, they're the scouts, right?
Scouts. Most Burman, few Burmans, retreated, and mostly what they found were Karen, Karen remaining.
So, David, what happened to you then if we go back to like your teenage years? Were you still...
Yeah. I was, it was in 1949, and the Karen, shall we say, rebels, of the Burman call them rebels, but it's occupied Taungji, where I was schooling, and with the one Kachin troops, one battalion of Kachin, because the Kachin want to go back to Kachin state to organize resistance or to organize rebellion also,
This was because you were seeking independence. Is that correct? So 1948.
1948.
The British gave.
It was like this. The Karen leaders were quite, friendly and have a good understanding with Aung San. Aung San who was a very, of course, popular leader of the Burman, Burman community.
But he was assassinated in 1947.
And he was assassinated in 1947, and the Karen became alarmed because he promised full equality and even independence.
Yeah.
After 10 years, if they want, to all the ethnic people. And the Karen also, of course, have that promise, and they became alarmed when he was killed, because there were also groups, ultra-nationalists, I would call them, Burman groups, And of course, Aung San was assassinated by those ultra-nationalists or ultra-chauvinists, Burman groups. And the Karen became alarmed, and so they set up their movement for the creation of a Karen state. And there was a nationwide demonstration in 1948, February 1948. And of course, Ne Win and group and those ultra-nationalists, they still saw the Karen as a British stooges and cannot be trusted, and they want to reimpose, their hegemony, like in the feudal days, like the feudal days. So the Karen actually were forced into rebellion, forced into insurgency, actually. But they accused the Karen of starting the insurgency against the, Burman, of course, government led by UNU. UNU was he was a moderate nationalist. He was not bad, but under the influence of the ultra-nationalist Burman, he followed some policy that was anti-Karen.
Because they removed, I've heard from a number of people, General Smith Dunn, who was a Karen, was a marvellous general, and he should have become head of the Defence Forces and so on. But was it Ne Win or had him removed? Is that right?
That's correct. They forced the Karen because Ne Win used in those days many groups, nationalities, as well as political groups had their own private army, like militia.
Right.
But the Karen also had that. And Ne Win also had, Ne Win was employed as second in command of the Bamar army. Of course, like the second in command, the top was the Karen Smith Dunn. He was with the British professional, soldier. So Aung San accepted him, and of course Ne Win, people like Ne Win who were, in BIA thought that Aung San was abandoning the idea.
The Burmans.
Yeah, Burman
So,
supremacy.
so David, go, if you don't mind. I'm just trying to understand, you were still quite young then, but what did you do after your schooling, after your secondary schooling?
Secondary schooling, 1949, when the Karen occupied Taungji, my hometown. I joined,
Joined
the Karen resistance, yes, as a fighter, as a soldier.
So you were only 1949. You're 15 or something.
14. I was 14.
So you didn't finish your secondary schooling?
No. I didn't finish secondary schooling. I was about to be promoted to 7th standard.
Right.
I passed what we call 6 standards, 6th grade or 6th standard. And it was the new, it was in May, so it was a new educational year. And when Taungji came under, my hometown came under occupation by the Karen, I joined the revolution without the approval of my parents, without even the knowledge of my.
And what does that
Because
mean? What does that mean, joining? You mean as an armed rebellion, or?
yes, I'm rebellion.
So,
Because my friends, many of my friends joined, young, like a little bit older, of course, but about the same also, same age also joined. So I joined,
and
and
was it called the Karen National Union then, or was it something different? The KNU
it was a current national union already. Yes,
already. Okay.
current national union had to lead. It was a political party, and they had to lead the current resistance. Current, armed uprising, let us say. Huh?
So where did you go, into the hills, or where did the
Uh, well, the armed group stayed there in the Shan state, because there was also the Burman troops trying to reoccupy, Taungji and area. So we had to do some fighting in Shan state. So I was fighting in Shan state for 2 months, I think 2-3 months, and then our unit went down to Taungu. Taungu is farther south. Taungu is on the in the basin of the Sitang River, right on the Sitang River banks. And we went there. It was a Rangoon Mandalay railway line, motor road, there, and the Karen occupied quite a stretch, of land there. And of course, the Delta area was, of course, all the Karen, almost like the base of the Karen, the biggest base of Karen resistance,
And was it a formal sort of army? Was it formal, like there were, privates and corporals and sergeants?
Oh, there were 3 battalions, 3 regular battalions of Karen. 2 immediately joined the resistance, but 1 was disarmed in Minyo, in the hill east of Mandalay. 1 was disarmed by the Burman. Of course, they didn't know that it was a surprise move. So the Karen were 1 battalion were put in a sort of camp, disarmed and there, and the Karen successfully, the Karen and the Kachin, like a commando raid, they successfully occupy Memyo.
Wow.
And release those disarmed Karen 3rd Battalion. So they got weapons as well. So 3 Karen battalions joined the resistance. So it was Ne Win probably thought that he could finish off the Karen movement, in a few, I think even months. But they didn't tell. Ne Win is just a very ignorant, politically and militarily. He was just he didn't even finish his university education, And so I joined, and I came down to Taungu, and finally, of course, we in 1949, late 1949, early 1950, I think, the Karen had to abandon the long stretch, of railway and motor road from Taungu down to somewhere near Bago.
Right.
So we have to go back to the hills, east of town. We have a hill here, or at least, the foothills of Eastern Burma.
And how many people are we talking about, roughly? How many people?
Oh, at that time, you mean the troops?
Yeah, your 3 battalions that...
Oh, 3 battalions, 1,500 regular Karens.
Right.
But there are also militia joining the resistance, like KNU, Karen National Defense Organization. KNU was a militia, more or less a militia, under the KNU, under the Karen National Union. So we have about, in those days, about 20,000 troops.
Wow.
Spread out in the Delta area, in the Karenni Shan State area, in Eastern Karen State, like present, on the Thai-Burma border, and in the Thai-Burma border. So spread out. Karen are very spread out, So they don't know their number. So we have to. So the Karen had to resort to guerrilla warfare, And the British, of course, unknowingly, the British were trapped to support Ne Win with the ship. It was an insane battle. And he organized, he dressed up some of his troops in Karen uniform and destroyed one Burman village. And he took, of course, he was assisted by the Burman politicians also.
David, this sounds very much like Mr. Putin.
And he took the British, the American, mission, diplomatic mission to go see destroy the village. They saying that this was the work of the Karen rebels. And the British were shocked, of course.
And so, this is actually on the outskirts of Rangoon, isn't it? Insane is very close to Rangoon.
Correct. Insane is about 5 or 6 miles.
Yeah.
So it was outside Insane. There are Karen villages also in Rangoon area. And but they chose one Burman village, and they took the British and diplomats, foreign missions there, most probably attaché, military attaché, to go see and accuse the Karen of doing the massacre and the destruction. And the British were shocked, so they supply Ne Win with the 6 shipload of
goodness
weapons.
That's a lot.
So the Karen had to abandon. And there was also a trick. The trick was they would talk peace, they said, while they were waiting for the ship to come. Sowa Uji went. Sowa Uji went to see, and they said that you have to lay down arms first before we talk about peace. So Sowa Uji, okay, in that case, I go back. But they didn't, allow him to go back. You write a letter. Yes. But so there was a delay, a delay for I think more than a week. So finally he promised that he will lay down arms, okay? But of course he had to,
convince everybody else.
And convince everybody else for his release,
Right.
So he went back. But of course, the other leaders, of course, didn't accept that it was a surrender. We cannot say that.
What was his name again, David? What was his name?
Soba Uji.
Okay. Yep.
Soba Uji was chairman. He was or president. We call it president of the KNU.
So when he got back, everybody else disagreed to lay down their arms, and you resorted to resorted to armed resistance.
They resume, fighting again. There was a truce, a truce for peace talk. And the British and some religious leaders were involved in, getting Soba Oji to meet with the Burman, of course, leader those days. And it was such a trick, such a
But it didn't work. It didn't work.
It didn't work, of course. Well, it wasn't peace talk, just a trick, just a trick to play for time. Yes, and the Karen resumed again. Of course, the Karen had to, after 3 months, I think 111 days, 111 days, they had to abandon insect, and most moved, the insect troops, of course, moved into the Irrawaddy Delta where they had most current, and some joined the Tangu, go back, some to east, the Tone, current area, the Tone, and so on. And of course, I was in 1952. Our leaders, of course, I was still a soldier, and in Christmas time, I came back to Rangoon because my parents, we could ride, it was quite free and easy in UNU's, under UNU's administration, civilian administration. And my parents told me that if you better come back and continue your education. And our military leader said, okay, you young people can go back. Now our resistance will be a purely guerrilla warfare. So the young people can go back for education. So I was one of them, and a few friends of mine also went back, to towns, and I went back to Rangoon. And
were your parents then in Rangoon, or they still?
No, they came down for Christmas.
Right. Okay.
It was Christmas time, and I had relatives there.
Okay.
I have relatives, my cousins, mostly cousins, many cousins there, because my father's side has, I think, 7 sisters and brothers. So I came back there, and I continued my education. My mother was very believe in education, so I continued my education there. So high school, I finished high school in 1956, I think. I finished further. And high school in those days, they introduced science. So I took science. Science, physics, chemistry, and mathematics, of course. And then I joined university in 1986. And right away, I got involved in student politics, student politics in those days. And
were you at the university in Rangoon?
Yes, Rangoon University.
In doing what faculty? Science or something, or engineering?
Science. Yes, science. In 1961, I finished the graduate Bachelor of Science. And then 62, there was a Newen ceasefire.
Oh, yes.
Against UNU. There was a split between UNU group and another group. Another group is led by so-called socialists, but actually not socialists. They are ultra-nationalist group, but but they under the cloak of socialists, but they are ultra nationalists. They try to use the Burma army led by Ne Win, I think because they lost in election. They badly lost the election, so they urged Ne Win. They used Ne Win as something like their client and seized power. And of course, they had a good relation with the British Labour, especially Labour Party. and of course, the US was also involved, I think.
Yes.
It was Kennedy, the time of President Kennedy, and Vietnam was going badly. So they were looking for a client state, Of course, they call it strongman. So Ne Win became a client state of the, shall we say, Western powers, and the US-led Western power. So he got a massive support from the British and also from the US under the name of, under the pretext of anti-communist. Of course, the people in those days, the people were very much against this ultra-nationalist. The ethnics were against the ultra-nationalist group, and some were against it. They say that it was the exploitation of the West, this, that, and people were much, I think, more or less persuaded by the leftist politics. And anyhow, but the Karen even had to, I was still there, the Karen resistance. I call it resistance, but maybe of course, the insurgency. Insurgency, we didn't like the term insurgency because when translated into Burmese, it's something like bandits. There was a lot of, dispute between some Karen leaders and BBC. Don't call us insurgent, because insurgent translated mean bandits in Burmese.
So you'd become involved in university politics, had you?
Yeah, I was involved in student politics. Of course, we were against this ultra-nationalist group, so-called socialists. Socialist. It is socialist only in name, but they are actually ultra-nationalists.
Yeah, well, he called it the Burmese path to socialism, didn't he?
Yeah.
So what happened when you finished your university education?
University, and so when Ne Win seized power, he nationalized everything.
Correct.
Yeah, and the jobs became very, very scarce, For even a graduate in the old days, it's easy to get a high school, what you call SAT, high school teacher,
Right.
Assistant teacher, yes. SAT is, of course, a little just one step below the commission. Commission officer, a gazetted officer, they call it. Gazetted is one step.
For a government position,
but
yeah.
Even SAT job became very scarce. So many friends joined many of my friends, joined the Burma army, even Karen, Karen friend. Because some Karen, mostly, of course, Christian. Of course, they learned that Ne Win had the support of the British and the Americans. So we have to cooperate. We have to support Ne Win. I said, I cannot do that. We had a student group,
But a lot of them just joined because they could get a job, right? That was.
Yeah, to get a job. No.
But you were a man of principle. You couldn't do that.
Yeah, I can do that. I say no. That is a Pharisee work.
So what did you do?
Pharisee. So I remained, and then I got a job to teach some SAT job. Yes, SAT job at a technical high school. Australian supported, I think, technical high school, and of course in those days the West, and allies, the U.S., British allies try to help as a friendly country, even under Nguyen. And then it became a client state of the West, so they try to help it. And I technical school, so I learned some engineering there. I was a SAT teaching science, chemistry, I think. Yes, I got high marks, at the university. High marks, so that I got it. When there's a vacancy, I got it. And what happens? I waited and see if the West will try to reform this and reintroduce democracy. Push Nguyen for a return to democracy, but it didn't happen. And finally, I decided. What happened was I tried, because I heard that there was a good market for jams in Thailand. So I went there in 1975, I think.
65?
Oh yeah, 65.
75? I don't know.
Yeah,
How long did you teach for?
70, I think. 70.
Okay.
I went to Thailand, but on my return, I was arrested and I lost my job, of course.
What were you arrested for?
I was arrested for crossing the border, without illegal, crossing the border into Thailand.
Oh, so you're arrested in Thailand or arrested in Burma?
In Bamar, in Karen state.
Oh.
My mother, area. I didn't know. Probably some of the guides working for the Burman military.
And so how long
became? After the Nguyen forced the Karen to become to arm rising, the Karen lost most Karens. Karen, they lost their jobs. They don't get any good position, and the only good position they want with a decent salary is to join the army. So many educated Karen joined the army in the old days.
So what did you do then, David? After you, presumably you went.
I lost jobs, so I waited and see. I started my own tutorial class. Tutorial class in those days is very popular, because schools were not teaching well. It was tutorial class, and I waited until 78. Then I rejoined the revolution. Of course, this time it's in Thai-Burma border area, Eastern Karen land, of course, Karen state. They regard it as Karen.
Again, armed resistance.
Armed resistance, yeah.
And did you just join as an ordinary soldier, or how did you join?
No, I joined. They gave me a lieutenant,
Right.
A lieutenant, 2 stars, because I started with the knowledge of chemistry and physics and
Exactly.
engineering.
Yeah.
I started arm production, in those days. There were a lot of, for example, bazooka rounds, bazooka rounds that was surplus, Korean War surplus, I think. Bazooka rounds, they don't know. But the launcher is very expensive, about 20,000. So I said, oh, we can do it.
Make them.
Yeah, we can make a launcher out of a aluminum tube. And instead of magneto to fire, you can use battery to fire the rounds. And they don't know that, with age, the filament in, to ignite the propellant become rusted and, stop working. So I repair the filament and put back that and use battery to fire instead of magneto. Of course, the original launcher is use magneto. Magneto and so they like it very much. And I started heavy weapons because we have to use heavy weapons, It was easy to get, for example, mortar rounds, I noticed that when the US is under a Republican president, they have a good sympathy for the ethnic, resistance. I call it resistance because we are forced into rebellion in self-defense, because they attack us first. So it's not a revolution in the sense of the communist insurgency or others, It's more like a American Revolution or French Revolution.
You wanted independence and equal treatment, right? Going back to the original promise.
Not even independence. We want a proper union, what we call federal union.
Right.
Because they call Burma a union, but it's a union between Burma proper, large area, which Burman claim to be, of course, their occupied area, that the Burman area plus their occupied area, especially the so-called Lower Burma. Lower Burma is occupied by Burman, feudal days. It was not their land. Their proper land is Middle Burma, the dry zone.
Around Mandalay, yeah.
And so it's a union of Burma proper, of what the British call it Burma proper, the plains, and the states. Mostly the states are the hill areas, the Chin, the Kachin, the Shan, the Karenni. There's a proper union because it's a Burman, the so-called Burman claim, the whole Burma proper, the British call it Burma proper, the plain area, and the states are mainly made up of non-Burman nationalities, we call, some call it ethnic nationality. But the Karen are mostly plain dwellers, actually. Only a fifth of the Karen are the hill people. So it's not a union of equality.
Right.
So we want a union of equality, so we call it a federal, genuine federal union. So we want, especially the 4 states, the 4 regions, they call it, the 4 regions in Lower Burma, to become multi-ethnic states. And the Burman can take 3 states in the middle of Burma, like Mandalay, Makwe, and Sagaing, even not the whole Sagaing, Lower Sagaing. 3 areas as Burman states. And the Karen, Burman, and even Arakan and Mon can belong to the multi-ethnic states as well as their own,
What would Rangoon be?
state. Rangoon will be one of the multi-ethnic states, or it can be federal, capital.
Right.
It can become a federal capital. Now the present capital, the Kremlin, set up by military, they call it as a home of the king. Naypyidaw is home of the king, actually.
Is that right? I didn't know what it meant.
The abode of the king.
So, David, go back to what you were doing, helping them with their bazookas, and
bazooka, and of course I studied guerrilla warfare. I thought they were well versed in guerrilla warfare. They weren't. And so I had to study guerrilla warfare, and I prepared, a handbook, a manual for guerrilla warfare, and also politics shorn of, ideology. I mean, democracy, don't get attached to any ideology strongly. You can study, but don't. The main thing is to liberate, our people, to liberate us, to get rid of of course, it become against military dictatorship, of course. So I prepare manuals, political and military, guerrilla warfare manuals for them. And I teach them how to shoot the heavy weapons, but some can follow, some brigades do not follow. Some brigades think that they knew better.
Are we talking now 70s and 80s, or are we just talking 70s?
We are talking about 70s, yes, 70s. And then, of course, when the unit I belonged to came under siege, like a siege, I went to the headquarters, supreme headquarters, political headquarters, Myanmar, and I became assistant to the general secretary of the KNU. Yeah.
What was his name?
Padoh Thin. Yes, it's spelled as thin, but it's pronounced thin.
And are we still? Was this late 70s?
The resistance and the Burman attack became, it was 1988. 1988, there was an uprising.
Student uprising. The student.
Yes, they call it student uprising. Yes, but it is opposition to the military dictatorship.
So all this time, from the mid-70s, it sounds like you went to the headquarters of the KNU. Is that correct?
No. Only 84. Only 84 I went to.
Okay.
The headquarters.
And you were assistant to the General Secretary, I think you called him.
Secretary, yes.
Yeah.
General Secretary.
So then you were obviously very involved in the senior political part of the KNU.
Yes.
And 88 happened. What happened after the student uprising? And
student uprising, of course, we accepted them, and but of course, it is still the Cold War, and the Western powers continue to support Ne Win, the military dictatorship. Continue to support massively. I mean, the West their allies also, like Japan. Japan is a very rich country,
Yeah.
Japan was second biggest economy in those days. Second base, they continue supporting the Ne Win, and they bought airplanes, like under the name of drug suppression.
Right.
But actually, Ne Win himself was involved in drug, or indirectly involved in drug. because the one Shan group was used by apparently CIA, used it even during the Vietnam War, and he was sharing his black money with Ne Win. That was indirectly, but
Is this Kun Sa?
or Ne Win, yeah, Khun Sa. If not Ne Win, the lower level.
And David, were you if the would you have been you would have been arrested if they could catch you? Is that correct?
If I went back now.
No, not now, but back when you're saying 84.
Oh, sure. They would arrest me if they want to.
But you were never caught by the military.
No, never caught money. So I became a refugee. My family at least became a refugee in Thailand.
In Chiang Mai, where you are now, or elsewhere?
No, Mae Sot.
Mae Sot, okay. And did you ever have time to get married?
Yeah, I got married in, let me see. Well, my girlfriends in towns didn't come, so I got married with, it's more like arranged marriage. When I got here, my unit was near Mae Sot, 101 battalion, 101 battalion.
And were you in charge of that battalion, or what was your role with the battalion?
No, I was just like an officer.
Right.
Helping with the weapon making.
Right.
And
but is this before you went to join the headquarters?
Yes, before I joined the headquarters.
Right.
Headquarters have, because our battalion came under siege, siege.
Right.
So, and there many from our battalion area civilians had to cross into Thailand as refugees. So 84, I was helping with the Karen Refugee Committee briefly, and then in 84, 85, yes, I went to Manipur at 5, and of course 88, there was a student uprising, the first nationwide uprising,
Yep.
Nationwide pro-democracy. It is more properly we can call it pro-democracy, but it was led by students.
Correct.
First pro-democracy uprising in towns and cities, so many came running to our areas, not only our areas, to ethnic areas, resistant areas. So we tried to help them, but the Ne Win and the military dictator continue to receive massive support from the Western powers and their allies like Japan, South Korea, and even like a small country like Singapore and Pakistan, I think, sometimes India. And so it's very complicated situation. Anyhow, the military, but in spite of this military, it was more or less the ethnic and the pro-democracy, alliance sort of happened. But the military with massive, finance and power, they managed to break up the current resistance. Sort of, they created the Buddhist, current Democratic Buddhist Army or something like. They use a lot of money. After that happened in 89, 90.
Right.
93, I think, 93, 94. But when the American had a Democrat president, they continued to support the military. And when we had a Republican, it was better. When when America had a Republican, they come to talk with us. They show, to express their sympathy and support, at least verbal support.
But did anyone give you money? Did anyone give you money?
No money, but it's money is no specific money.
No weapons. No one supported the KNU.
No one. We got during Reagan administration, we got a few, but those were surplus. The U.S. was trying to support Cambodian resistance against
Right.
Vietnam communists. So the surplus were in the hands of the Thai, so we got it. We got those surplus, but we have to buy it. No, not free. We didn't. So that was
The mid-90s.
Now, when and then of course when 2008, in 2008, the dictatorship, the military Burman dictatorship produced a constitution, the so-called disciplined democracy.
This is the slog, time of the slog?
Yes, time of the slog, and SBDC, but later SBDC,
What was your role then, David? What was your role by 2008 with KNU?
I was still assistant.
Okay.
Because the old guards are still there.
Right.
As the secretary. And but I became a joint secretary in 2000, must be 2008,
Didn't you become the vice president then? Vice president?
Vice president in 2010, I think.
How long were you vice president for?
Vice president only one term, 4 years.
Right.
What happened was there was a lot of pressure. When Clinton became president, they said non-violence resistance. And of course, they think that they can reform the military. Probably they think that they can reform the military. And of course, they already ended. Probably we can say the COA ended in 1990. 1990. And the German, I think the German managed to get in support of this, the German managed to get the Kachin, our allies, to have ceasefire. And they come and try to peace talk with the military. But we did. But the problem is the military said you have to lay down arms first.
Again, a trick again.
A trick. Of course, divide and they are conquer,
Yeah.
Divide and conquer.
David, I'd just like to read, this is like 2010, so I'd just like to read a couple of words that were written by Daniel Peterson in his book, Secret Genocide. He wrote about you. This is 2010 when you were, I think, 73, 74, something like that. He said, David likes a drink, smokes heavily, and speaks slowly and with great reserve, thinking carefully before answering any question. His election to his current position occurred in 2008, and he takes his role as Vice President very seriously indeed. Some call him hardline, while others say he's simply pragmatic. Sound true?
Yeah, fairly correct. Fairly true. Well, I did smoke, but not heavily. But I like to drink
Okay.
sometimes, yes. But now I have to stay away from drink because I have some back problems, probably kidney problem.
So you had to try and pull the group back together. Is that correct?
Yes, because under when Clinton came to power, they pressure us to have ceasefire talk with the military and non-violence resistance. This that they thought that the Karen, the ethnic, was just a small group. They believe the military propaganda that the ethnic altogether is less than 30%, sort of. They are nearly 70%. That sort of propaganda. And there's a non-violence resistance. And of course, to find a compromise solution. And Aung San Suu Kyi also had to accept this non-violence resistance, a compromise solution, a peaceful solution to the problem. But the military, carry on their total control, their totalitarian system. Of course, they say democracy only, just on paper. But democracy is disciplined democracy, something like guided democracy in Indonesia.
That's right. That's correct. Yep.
Guided democracy. But the Western power could change the military dictatorship led by Suharto in Indonesia quite easily, let us say. But in the case of Burma, the Burman military dictatorship, they are just, what shall I say, they are extremist, zealot, yes. So you cannot change them by peaceful means. Aung San Suu Kyi also accepted this, and we try. And the final, of course, I oppose, because when we go and talk, they said, you have to lay down arms first. And that happened also, even after, and they said they have to lay down arms. During Aung San Suu Kyi, the democratic rule, led by NLD. We went there, we find a compromise solution, but there was no compromise. They just maintained their position of total surrender by all the ethnic resistance. How could that happen? We were against self-defense, not we are not fighting for even separation, or we are fighting for an equality, because Burma is a country of minorities. The Burman population, the real Burman population is less than 30%. If you take away Proto-Burman, like Arakanese, like the Wayans, like some Shan, who became more or less what do you call Proto-Burman?
Because, of course, they claim it's 60% Burman, don't they?
More than that, nearly 70%. Because they said all Buddhists are Burman. So especially in Lower Burma, Lower Burma. Karen, nearly 70% of the Karen were Buddhist. And nearly 90% of the Mon, maybe nearly 100% of the Mons were Buddhist. And of course, the Arakanese are Buddhists also. And they claim to be. But the actual Burman, is less than 40%, 30%. So that's why they cannot suppress the ethnic resistance.
They're too
spite
big.
of massive support
Power.
from the West.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in 2014, your term came up. What did you do then? Did you retire because you're already in your mid-70s, right?
Not retire. It was another group, what became NCA group. It was some young, calling themselves young thugs. They said they don't know. They think that of course, they came under the especially Clinton administration, Obama administration, to treat the military as if, a reformable, compromise solution. And they receive massive, money, not directly from the West, but I cannot talk it here.
So is that NCA group? NCA?
Yeah, they use vote buying, one. Number two, vote cheating. Because one of them, vote counting, they just throw away my name and they put in. And when I challenged to audit the vote, they said, oh, the vote had been banned already.
The ballots. So, but you said you were helping the NCA, is that right?
NCA.
You were helping them?
I'm not helping NCA.
Oh.
But I am serving as a senior leader. I was serving as only as a patron.
A patron.
Patron means when they ask for advice, I give. When they don't ask, I don't give. NCA is a KNU group, but it's split into two.
Oh, KNU group. Okay, so you were advisor to them.
Well, what the military said, you come and share the wealth with us. Don't talk about democracy or whatever it is. There's a lot of business coming. A lot of business coming. The Western investment will come massive. So you just surrender, total surrender, join with us, and don't, NLD is just a hopeless. They said, they don't know about the state, what we call state building.
Right, correct.
That state building is what they think.
Nation building.
Building. They think that they have to turn all the ethnics into Burma.
Yeah.
Become one language, one area, unitary government, no federal, totally unitary. And of course, it's like in the feudal days that the military will be just, the military will be leading in government.
So, David, it seems like what you talked about, what happened in 1948, it looks like we're now in 2022. Not much has changed.
Not much.
Nothing's changed.
But now the uprising, I think the uprising is once in 100 years opportunity. So we have to join hands with the people's uprising, the people uprising and get rid of this totalitarian system, completely. That is my line. That is our line. We have the KNU become into NCA group and the concern group. What do we call concern group? The realist group. We call it realist group also. Yes, we are just a faction in KNU. And
so, David, using your 87 years of wisdom, what do you see is likely to happen? Do you think change is likely? Do you think?
Yes, change is likely. We have no other option, but we have to. The ethnic resistance must coordinate and cooperate in all possible ways with the people's. We call it people's uprising. In towns and cities, the uprising of the people in towns and cities, and set up a federal, what do we call a federal union, a genuine federal, democratic federal union.
Well, David, I'd like to thank you so much for your life story, which is a history lesson of Burma, of Myanmar. You have lived through so much of modern history, which is one of the main reasons I'm doing this podcast, because when people like you are gone, the stories are gone. And it's
That's right. Yeah.
it's a very valuable story that you've been able to communicate. So I'd like to thank you very much, David, for your time in this.
Yes, I thank you very much also